Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. So let me just finish out this forward actually. Probably could have just finished it out in that last video, but so he's talking about pretty much the Islamic political force that was starting to occur. So he continues on by saying these developments were particularly notable in Zaria, Kano, and Katsina, which at the time formed the core axis of Hausaland. The leadership of these states in that period is still remembered for the bold changes that affected in the administrations to make them conform to the Islamic standards. In Kano, for an example, Muhammad Rumfa invited Sheikh Muhammad al-Maghili, a North African Muslim jurist of international reputation, to advise him on administering an Islamic government. Al-Maghili, his visit to Kano was of great significance to the process of Islamization in Hausaland. For his books and religious rulings, his fatwas gained wide circulation. One of his books, Tajuddin fi Mal Alal Muluk, described as a comprehensive treaty on government, seemed to have been highly influential throughout Hausaland. As Islam gained strength in Hausaland, its significance as a pilgrimage route and center of learning increased. By the 16th century, the reputations of some Hausa states, state capitals, as centers of Islamic learning, Kano and Katsina in particular, were already high enough to attract many Muslim scholars and students. So again, you can see how Islam comes there and it's already just changing the minds of the people, just recreating the atmosphere in a positive way. And he continues, the Hajj serving as a permanent link with the rest of the Muslim world and a source of continuous flow of Islamic thought and ideas, further reinforced the intellectual development of Hausaland. In due course, the educational system with the clarity-defined curriculum and methodology was fashioned along the lines of the Sankore University of Timbuktu, from which it seemed to have received the greatest impetus. However, the Moroccan invasion of the Songhai at the end of the 16th century, with this intended seizure of Timbuktu, weakened that intellectual impetus and upset the political stability of Hausaland, because the power of Songhai had kept some of the leaders of the Hausa states in check. With the rise of another axis of power in Hausaland, the 17th and 18th centuries saw the almost equally powerful Hausa states engaged in continuous and devastating interstate warfare without a clear winner emerging. Quite naturally, the security, economy, and the learning of Hausaland was affected by this situation, unfortunately. Though learning continued even in these difficult circumstances, when the movement was restricted, there were many obstacles to the spread of knowledge. Entrenched in warfare, desperate for victory, rulers in the Hausaland were willing to go to any lengths to win battles, even if it meant violating the limits set by Islam. Political leadership gradually degenerated into tyranny, and corruption, resulting into injustice, oppression, and misery for most of the people. The consequent materialism and permissiveness gave their receding paganism a chance to resurface, and some Muslims started once more to mix Islamic practices with traditional pagan rituals. May Allah preserve us, protect us from that. He continues on. Muslim scholars who form the backbone of any Muslim society were also affected by the pervading decadence. Some gave support to the tyrannical order by joining the rulers, whereas others withdrew into silence, leaving only a few courageous scholars to raise objections and to point accusing fingers at the tyranny and corruption around them. One of the few who dared to raise his voice and who was in fact who organized a jihad was Sheikh Jibril ibn Umar, with whom Usman dan Fodio studied and from whom he may have acquired his fervor to revive Islam and to restore the Sunnah. It was out of this rising tide of discontent on the one hand and the expectation on the other that Usman dan Fodio emerged. How Usman responded to this challenging situation is precisely what this book is about. Because this work has been produced outside of the conventional scholastic environment, it is blessed, free from these pointless academic technicalities for which universities today are so well known. The imaginative capacity, the analytic insight, and unique style of the author gives the reader a rich and profound account of the great phenomenon that it is the Sokoto Jihad. By drawing on the rich intellectual inheritance of the Sokoto Caliphate and relying on the original Arabic works of the Sokoto Jihad leaders and their contemporaries, the author has rescued the reader from the distortions, misconceptions, the fabrications which permeate the works of European scholars and their heirs. For almost a century, this is very important, for almost a century, the Muslim mind has been under the sway of imperialism, especially as manifested in its educational institutions. Muslim history has been distorted and all access to the true message of Islam has been denied. The Muslim personality has been under persistent attack and the Muslim mind has been fed entirely on Eurocentric thoughts and ideas. There's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said about this. This is a huge part of why the Muslim Ummah is having some challenges today. He continues, Muslims therefore have lost self-confidence and have developed an inferiority complex. This has led to the meekness and the docility and the tendency to readily imitate European thought. However, history, it is said, has a habit of repeating itself, and Islam, with its characteristic resilience, is reviving itself from within the very fortresses of imperialism. More and more Muslims are seeking out their true history and the true message of Islam, and abandoning the false goals they have been pursuing. You see, when a country or nation has been colonized and they can remove that true knowledge from a people, and then they can implant a completely different viewpoint that goes in another direction, it causes tremendous difficulty and problems. It causes a dysfunction. You might have like a computer, If somebody just puts a virus on your computer, or they just erase the whole program, the computer is there physically, but it has a completely different data, different software. MashaAllah, Allah knows best. So let me just continue on. Coming at a time when an increasing number of Muslims are working to develop Islamic solutions to their problems, this book will provide them with an important part of their history and will help them define their own future. For indeed, a people without a past are people without a future. At this critical point, one hopes and prays that Muslims will not betray their history. Because if they do so, history will certainly betray them. Allah the Most High has informed us. You who have Iman, if any of you renounce your way of life, your deen, Allah will bring forth a people whom He loves and who love Him, humble to the believers and fierce against the unbelievers, who do jihad or struggle in the way of Allah, and they do not fear the criticism of the criticizer. That is the unbounded favor of Allah which He gives to whomever He wills, and Allah is boundless and all-knowing. The Quran, Surah 5, Ayat 54. And that is the foreword by Usman M. Bugaji. So, we have completed the foreword. The next part of the book is going to go into introduction, so we'll do that next, inshallah, in the next video. All right, talk to you guys soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.